present, for example, prior art relating to games rather than patent documents. And I think this was the Achilles heel when it came to the most recent report that we did covering Japan's patent office rejecting Nintendo's application for another patent relevant to Palworld. Because, real quick, if you guys missed that video, basically the patent office in Japan is now actually looking at real games, real actual examples that are on the market, and they're looking at that and saying, okay, well, clearly these games have existed. I mean, we talked about Monster Hunter 4, like these games have existed for over a decade now with some of these mechanics that Nintendo is recently invented, right? And so it's possible that a third party may jump in here and also provide more prior art games to bolster this argument. But honestly, I'm not, let me be clear, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal professional, nothing in this video is legal advice, okay? But I feel like if the literal director of the patent office is setting its sights on Nintendo and is re-examining this with already having two prior art examples of existing patents, then I feel like they're already cooked, perhaps. But yeah, and Nintendo's lawyers are going to respond. They're going to do it. I mean, the legal department at Nintendo is insane. And later in the video, we'll actually cover another lawsuit that Nintendo is involved in, so stay tuned for that. But let's take a look at the wider ramifications here, okay? This development further undermines the credibility of Nintendo's patent assertions against Palworld. Man, I could not have said that better myself. This is now the second case in as many weeks where a patent or patent application related to the patents Nintendo is asserting against Palworld is viewed skeptically by one of the world's top 4 patent offices, the other 2 big ones being Europe and China, of course. But get this, the last confirmed director-initiated order of an ex parte re-examination was in 2012. The all-time number of such orders technically changed in 2019, but based on our research, that fact was due to a change in counting methods. So the actual last time that this occurred was 2012. So it's been over a decade since we've seen something like this, which again, I feel like probably means that this is pretty serious. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a girl on YouTube. I don't know anything about the legal system, but I mean, like, if something like this is that rare, then Nintendo did not see this coming. They are being blindsided by this. They thought they were in the clear already, and as it turns out, the backlash got so big around this, and the director was like, oh, actually, wait a minute. Hey, wait, everyone's right. This is actually BS. Like, this is so stupid. Let's re-examine this, right? And this is my favorite part. This is what I said at the beginning of the video. The article goes on to say, the only plausible explanation is that the United States Patent Office's leadership became aware of all the negative publicity surrounding the grant of patent number 397 and wanted to correct this mistake. No system is perfect, which is why there must be processes in place to fix issues. That is what the U.S. Patent Office is demonstrating. So I wasn't being hyperbolic when I said earlier that, like, the online backlash, literally you guys watching these videos or reading these articles or spreading the news on social media, right? Like, it's actually working, which is, it's rare, right? It is genuinely rare that online backlash actually has a real world impact. I mean, let's be honest. The Switch 2, for example, has had tons of backlash with game key cards and, like, Bricks consoles and all sorts of other things, and yet it just surpassed 10 million in sales. So really, the online backlash hasn't done that much. We'll talk about the Switch 2 sales in just a minute because there is actually a big update for that. But in this one specific case, it actually looks like all of the negative publicity, which started with the Game Spray, so huge shout out to them, of course. All their articles are always linked in the description. It actually seems like it's working. The article goes on to say, what makes this initiative even more remarkable is the fact that since Director Squires was appointed by President Trump and confirmed by the U.S. Senate, all of his other measures made it harder to challenge patents. The first time he intervened with respect to a particular patent, he actually revived a canceled patent declaring expert testimony unreliable. So I think what GameSpray is trying to say here is that this patent office director is typically against challenging patents, and even still, he is personally issuing a re-examination order, which again makes this a really big deal and probably will not end well for Nintendo. GameSpray goes on to say, normally expert re-examinations result from a petition by a company that has to defend against a patent, has been threatened, or anticipates litigation. Here, however, there was no other company involved. The U.S. Patent Office director himself took the initiative. They go on to say, to be clear, Nintendo does obtain patents on genuine technical inventions, which are typically hardware patents, but it has also sought to abuse the patent system by monopolizing game rules. Nintendo regularly has to try to invalidate other companies' patents. And here's what GameSpray thinks about this whole situation. They said, this order by Director Squires is good news for the US patent system and for that small company named Pocket Pair that is forced to defend against Nintendo's patent assertions. By extension, it validates GameSpray's concerns over the grant of this patent and the criticism voiced by others who subsequently voiced similar opinions. That is you guys on social media. That is me making these videos. And so in the last week or two, Nintendo's legal department has taken two massive blows. First, in the United States, which is a very serious one. Obviously, they're not currently suing Palworld in the United States or claiming patent infringement or anything like that. But if they were considering doing it, they're going to have a harder time now because now the director of the patent office himself is aware of Nintendo, what their legal strategy is, and how they are trying to strong arm other gaming companies with these insane patents that make no sense. And then the other one is in Japan. Again, I just made a video about this, but one of their patent applications was rejected by the Japan Patent Office, which wasn't a patent directly used against Palworld, but it was in the same family, which implies that other patents within that family may also be rejected as well. Let's see what Reddit has to say about this. I'm sure they're going to be super excited. Hours ago, top comment is good Nintendo. That's pretty much exactly what I thought the top comment would be. Someone responds, I would love to see them face some repercussions for patent abuse, but it's not just Nintendo. There's more blatant examples of, quote, this is an obvious solution to a common problem that doesn't warrant any patent protection in this industry. The obvious solution would be game mechanics can't be patented. The person says, remember when Bandai Namco patented minigames during loading times? Seems that patent ran out in 2015. Maybe devs should bring it back for some modern games. That's actually crazy. I didn't even know they did that. But now that I think about it, didn't like some of the old Dragon Ball Z games have like little mini games you could do in the loading screens? That was always super cool. That's like a core memory I completely forgot about. So in response to this person saying the obvious solution would be game mechanics can't be patented, this person goes on to say that's really what's happened. Movie filming techniques can't be patented. Why are games different? If someone makes a dolly zoom in a game, they can patent it if they can find that no other game has done it, despite it being in film for more than half a century. Patent attorney here, that's not true. It would be considered obvious unless there's a particular difficulty in implementing it into a game. So yeah, I don't actually know what's going on there. But I mean, let's be real here. We've seen Nintendo patent things that already exist in games anyway. They basically just issue the patent, and if the patent office can't figure out if it's legit or not, they pass it, and then they just wait for a challenge. It seems like. I mean, again, I'm not a legal professional, but that's what it seems like is going on. The solution should be you abuse the system, all your patents become public domain. I mean, absolutely based. Am I right? I don't know if that. I don't know. That far, but like definitely think that there should be some repercussion, right? This person says, hope they lose the Pocket Pair lawsuit, so maybe Nintendo will drop their hubris, but that's wishful thinking for these filthy scammers. And this guy responds, not until the Nintendo adults stop supporting everything they do. And this is like my number one thing that I've talked about with the Pokemon videos is that you're just not gonna get a better product until you start to vote with your wallet. It's really that simple. They're going to keep doing exactly what they've been doing, and that's it. And this guy says Nintendo will never stop being litigious. They have been for 50 years. This person says Nintendo can get when you get overly greedy sooner or later, there will be consequences. Holy shit, we are going into the good ending. This person says, this seems reasonable. Prior art references implies their more recent patents doesn't make a novel step to improve upon previous patents, which have inventions that are similar to this new one. By referencing Nintendo's own previous patents and one by Konami, the director could be saying, hey, you guys really aren't patenting anything new. It's already been referenced in the past well enough, and denying them the opportunity to reframe what's already patented in a way their lawyers could benefit from in court. And so this does really feel like, a nail in the coffin if they wanted to take Palworld to court in the United States. This is kind of a preemptive stopgap on that to say, hey, look, this you're not going to use this patent, at least that's for sure. But there was one legal dispute this week that did go in Nintendo's favor, and that was against a literal YouTuber. That's right, folks. The guy who streamed pirated Switch games and told Nintendo, quote, capitalism is cancer, must now pay $17,500. The player who pirated games like Mario and Luigi Brothership lost the lawsuit. Gosh, who could have seen that coming? This is the third lawsuit that Nintendo has won in a string of lawsuits against individual people, either for IP concerns, copyright concerns, or whatever the case might be. We reported on all of them on the channel, and everyone keeps losing to Nintendo. The first one, somebody lost because they didn't even have legal counsel. They just defended themselves and then lost. The other one, the dude stopped like responding, I think, and his lawyer even stopped responding. And I think, I don't know what these people actually think is going to happen here, but Nintendo is just Exodia obliterating these small individual people in these lawsuits, okay? Let's see what the article has to say here. Jesse Ian, sorry if I mispronounced that, faced over $1 million in potential damages when Nintendo sued him for streaming allegedly pirated copies of its games ahead of their official release. Guys, I'm not a legal professional, but I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say, you probably shouldn't do that. Like, yeah, let's not do that, okay? First of all, piracy is illegal, okay? No matter how you feel about it, it's illegal. So first of all, probably don't do that, okay? But also, if you're gonna do it, don't broadcast it to the whole world. Like, what are you doing? Are you serious? That is the dumbest thing I can actually imagine, okay? So I really do struggle to feel bad for this guy now that I know that he literally just screamed it publicly, like, what an absolute idiot. But anyway, the article goes on to say, when the company initially issued copyright strikes against his channel, he reportedly responded by trolling the Mario Maker and sharing ways to pirate its games. He has now lost that lawsuit and owes Nintendo $17,500. Honestly, he was facing over $1 million in potential damages. Maybe he had a good lawyer. That's pretty cool. I mean, good for him. It's only $17,500. Not bad when it comes to Nintendo, right? The court issues an injunction preventing defendant from infringing Nintendo's copyrighted works, including by streaming and from bringing in Switch emulators, Nintendo's proprietary cryptographic keys, or other software or technologies that circumvent Nintendo's technological protective measures, U.S. District Judge Gordon Gallagher wrote in an order issued earlier this week. But what's most remarkable is how defiant Jesse remained throughout the entire case. Quote, love y'all. Capitalism is cancer. My channel is being deleted for sharing gameplay videos. This is your reward, end quote. He posted on social media when he first caught the attention of Nintendo's legal department. Even after the lawsuit was filed, he continued to troll the company despite not mounting any legal defenses of his own. He even posted, quote, should have done more research on me. You might run a corporation. I run the streets. Wow. Based Jesse, am I right? But amid all of this catastrophe, Nintendo taking a blow from the US Patent Office, Nintendo taking a blow from the Japan Patent Office, all of the negative discourse that is going to be formed from this YouTuber being sued for $17,000, right? I know a lot of people are going to look at this and say like, oh, well, he kind of deserved it. He was literally live streaming games that weren't even out yet, so the piracy here is obvious, right? I know a lot of people won't feel bad for him, but you guys need to understand how much people hate Nintendo right now, okay? A lot of people are going to side with this guy, even if he actually did something literally illegal, just because people hate the fact that a massive corporation is going after individual people, right? Despite all of the negative backlash that's going to come from that and everything else going on, Nintendo's most recent financial data came out, and as we can see, the latest Switch 2 sales numbers are insane. There's no question that Switch 2 is the biggest console launch ever. It sold 10 million units in the latest quarterly financial report covering up to the end of September. The numbers are adding down. The Switch 2 is enjoying the most successful console launch of all time. Nintendo said its new console has sold 10.36 million units in the first 4 months between its June 5th launch date and September 30th. It's selling twice as fast as the Switch, which managed 4.7 million units over the equivalent time period. The PS5 sold 7.8 million during its first 2 quarters and took 8 months to reach 10 million sales and became Sony's fastest selling console ever, narrowly ahead of the PlayStation 4. Now, I don't love the comparison to the PS5 because, as you guys know, the PS5 came out in 2020. It was really hard to get your hands on one. People were paying scalper prices. it's necessarily fair to compare these two. But anyway, on the back of these numbers, Nintendo raised its sales forecast for Switch 2 in the current financial year from 15 million to 19 million units. This would make the Switch 2 Nintendo's biggest seller over its first year, ahead of the Game Boy Advance even, which is insane. Now, 19 million units, that means they expect to basically double what they've already sold in its entire first year, right? So we have June, July, August, September, right? Because it went through September 30th. So in 4 months, it sold 10 million, which means they think in the next 8 months, it's going to sell another 9 million, right? That's exactly what they just said here. That's totally possible because remember, this through September doesn't include Pokemon Legends ZA launch, which we know in Japan sold a ton of units because they were bundled together, right? And I think that we may see something similar here in the United States and around the world. We're going to see a lot of the Switch 2 Pokemon bundle fly off the shelves. And then on top of that, we are now in holiday season. We are officially in November. We've got this month and next month before all of the holidays for Christmas. We got Black Friday, we have Cyber Monday. Like all of these big things are coming down the pipeline. We have big game releases. We have Hyrule Warriors coming out soon. We have Metroid Prime 4. We have Kirby Air Riders. Like there are big games still coming down the pipeline for the Switch 2. So I think maybe 19 million is possible. I personally feel like that's a little bit high. I would be surprised if it broke 19 million. I know that it's selling well objectively, obviously. I feel like the sentiment of the Switch 2, like the hype I feel like is really dying down though, right? Like not that many people are talking about Mario Kart World, which was like the biggest game for the console. We also see that Donkey Kong Bonanza sold 3.49 million copies, which is pretty good. It's actually really good to be honest with you, but it's like a third of what Mario Kart World sold at 9.57 million. 92% attach rate for the console, which is insane. Obviously, a large majority of those was literally just a bundle, right? It makes a ton of sense. But I don't know. I feel like all of the hype for the Switch 2 is really behind us at this point, and we're not going to see more hype for the console until we see another big game release, right? Like, we need to see a 3D Mario. We need to see an actual Pokemon game, right? And Legends game was a joke. Everybody knows that. I've covered that game. It's not on the channel. So yeah, right now, I think the Switch 2 has objectively sold full launch ever. It's going to continue to sell super well through the holiday, but I mean, I can only speak for me now, right? Like, obviously, the sales are what they are. The data is the data. You can't argue with the data, right? But for me, I do feel like we kind of seen the hype die down for the Switch 2. Everyone who wanted one has one. And while there are some big games left coming out, it's no Mario, right? It's no big Pokemon. Like, I think the biggest games for the year are behind us, even though a lot of people are hyped for Metroid Prime or Kirby Air Riders. I don't know. I feel like we need a big Zelda game launch, right? Like Hyrule Warriors is a Warriors game. We need like another Breath of the Wild, right? That's gonna bring the hype to the Switch 2 through the roof. But we don't have any of that coming down the pipeline, at least from what we can tell. But anyway, it's gonna be interesting to see how the Nintendo versus Power World situation continues to evolve over the course of 2026 and even into 2027. Obviously, right now, the patent claims are only in Japan still, but this is a huge blow to Nintendo in the United States if they do decide to go after Pocket Pair in the United States as well, which I think a lot of, again, I'm not a legal professional, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I do think that legal experts suspect that they may attempt to do that, especially if things fall through in Japan, right? Like if Pocket Pair actually wins over there, or if the patent claims get dismissed, or they settle out of court, or whatever the case might be, right? If any of that happens and it doesn't go how Nintendo wants it to go, they're going to do the same thing because the United States is one of the biggest markets for video games, and obviously Power World is no exception there. The game is super popular here as well. So this U.S. Patent Office taking aim at Nintendo here and ordering a re-examination, the literal director ordering the re-examination, to me feels like it is a preemptive blow to that legal strategy that they were probably gearing up to take at some point. Is this going to prevent them from taking legal action against Power World in the United States? Probably not, right? Again, they have 2 months to respond to this, so I do think that they probably will. But again, Florian Mueller, I believe, is a legal professional. Don't quote me on that. I believe that they are, but they seem to think that this is some pretty serious stuff and that this patent is definitely going to get re-examined and possibly completely shut down. And who knows, is this going to be a domino effect where further things get re-examined now that everyone is like hyper aware of how awful Nintendo's legal department actually is? It's going to be really interesting to see the developments on this. And of course, if you guys don't want to miss those developments, subscribe down below because you might think that you're actually not. It does help get the word out there. It causes real change.
Yeah, we just turned $5 to $150 in bonus bets.
You're good, Kevin. Let's see your one. If you always, if you
Welcome back to the most professional Stomp Round 2 with the former world champion Zargan Blue, the executioner. It's Rogue. Facing off against the much more relatable Terran Order, the People's Terran from Team Liquid, we have here. In a best of three Terran versus Zerg Showdown. The two-player truly embodying the phrase quantity as a quality all its own. And speaking of quantity and quality, if you could smash that like button. Me, me. Well, I'm happy out of it. 1,789 this video on this cast, and I'll cast it, but I'll probably do that because I. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, you've had a good day so far, and hopefully, it's about to get just a little bit better. Then Rogue's drones as he tries to take a third base. The SCV Reaper combo making that uncomfortable at best, but Rogue ends up getting the 6 o'clock after not too much trouble. And let's be honest, maintaining as much distance as possible from the Terrans is probably good for both physical and mental health. But the Reaper, it never forgets. It never forgets. So I'm not sure how much both those things are going to be relevant as the drone trapped in a prison of its own design, protected by children. Steven. Which will drive back. Mostly over since until there's starport units, Zergling speed is enough to deal with the handful of Hellions and Reaper. Kira doesn't know for sure that Zergling speed is off in Scout the Maze. So the time of Earth says, like the case, it's gonna pop in. 5 seconds until Zergling speed, so Kira knows he's going the lines. It's rarely gonna cross over. And Kira, one of the best players. How
You can choose the Great Caravan. I strict are not even strong. Heck, it's not even rainless. Discover relics in the ruins. Learn tricks from abandoned camps. Learn skills by finishing quests.
There's nobody love the soup.
Seeker. What's up?
Ladies and gentlemen, you thought it'd be the winner of the battle that'd be broken by the beak like a cattle? Straddle your saddle, because you're in for a bump ride. The tides turned in the Toronto Cuffs Hoffman Taylor Swift Quinn, who lost the beef and thought the bots would help him win. The court of public opinion. Yin, he's the Lucians of Lucian will have the goofy kid from Compton with a spooky grin. Because it is now Law Brianna, or should I say Bot Brianna, whose face is front and center of a case against Spotify, where they claim they quantify Drake's homicide on the charts as modified by the bots and not fans truly consuming the arts. So let's break this mess down. Come along for the ride, but first press your index down on the like and subscribe. I study rapaholics, so let me. So, lovers and gentlemen, as many of you guys know, Drake unleashed mayhem upon the industry when he sued UMG over promoting and publishing Not Like Us. One of the key three factors within Drake's lawsuit was that UMG used illegal business practices to deceive music listeners into thinking that the song was way more popular than it was. How did UMG do that? Well, through payola,
paying DJs under the table to spin the song on radio, through paying social media influencers to discuss the song, react to it, and review it positively. And of course, the major accusation that drew in the most amount of headlines, as Drake was the first artist of that type of magnitude to peel the curtain back on this deceptive practice, which man, have no level, but no one spoke up to it on this level. Body allegations, fake dreams. I study fake streams for a living. Drake accused Kendrick Lamar and UMG of using fake streams to make the numbers of Not Like Us go crazy on Spotify and make the public think Kendrick not only won the battle of better diss songs, but also of more popular records. The irony is that every record that Not Like Us broke on Spotify streaming platform, like being, the fastest song to hit 300 million streams, the song to have the most amount of streams in a single day. All those records that Not Like Us broke, the person who held the record before was Drake with God's Plan. So Drake suing UMG over the numbers of Not Like Us being astronomical on Spotify is kind of ironic because the artist who had these astronomical numbers before Kendrick, who Kendrick knocked off, was Drake himself. So much so to the point that during his commercial peak, when God's Plan was smashing all these records on Spotify, during the release of his 2018 album Scorpion, Spotify had actually plastered Bob Liana's face all across their app on every single playlist. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. Look at this picture. And then look at this one. I mean, come on, guys. This is 2018. Drake is on the Fresh Gospel playlist, the Cookout playlist, the Ambient Chill playlist. In the first picture I showed you guys, he was on the Best of British playlist. Is Drake a British artist? No, he's not. But because he was on that playlist and many others, his album that they were plugging at the time on all these playlists, Scorpion, had a growing streaming record on both Apple Music and Spotify with more than 302 million plays on a single day. But many users complained that Spotify put his photo on all of these playlists. And subscribers who have paid for the premium version of Spotify, which are supposed to be accounts that are advertising free of advertisements, they said putting Drake on all these ridiculous playlists actually was the equivalent to advertising. This wasn't natural playlisting. It's not natural recommendations when Drake is plastered on gospel playlists, right? So what did they do? They demanded refunds from Spotify. And Spotify seemingly agreed that this was ridiculous because one subscriber had even said he had been offered a 1 month free Spotify subscription as a result of his complaint. Now, why do I bring this up? Because if there was one artist in the industry that was privy to enough behind the scenes manipulation tactics on these streaming platforms to know that he could file a lawsuit against a major record label that he was also signed to and accuse them of using bots, it was Drake. But the problem is, he didn't know enough about the bots. When Drake initially filed his lawsuit against UMG, the only major source that he had in the paperwork was a live stream that Snacka Diddler had done with this anonymous user who had claimed that he had been paid by Anthony Soleil, one of Kendrick's team members, for the guy to basically put 30 million streams on Not Like Us in its first week of release. Keep in mind, even if that was true, 30 million fake streams is nothing compared to the actual billions of streams that Not Like Us got. But this claim wasn't true. The guy on Academics' stream showed a screenshot of an LLC that he said he got a money transfer to in order to put the fake streams, and it was called Anthony Soleil LLC. When you look it up, that LLC, that company, doesn't even exist.
Early on, when the song first dropped, it wasn't him. I'm not gonna say he reached out to me himself because obviously he didn't. It was definitely somebody from management. They wanted me to do 30 million early to the rest of the views because obviously it was gonna be a hit song either way. I like the song. You want me to be honest? The song is good.
We also divulge names. Who reached out to you on behalf of him?
I have payment proof, and I will DM that to you as long as won't expose it right now on stream in front of everybody. But I will send you all the proof, all the receipts, and everything. Okay, bro, it's Anthony Soleil. I'm crashing out because like this is for my safety. This is how I feel. That's who paid me. Not saying I was in direct contact with him. That's just the name that was on the account that I got paid by.
And this source was so baseless that when Drake actually filed an amended complaint, like he corrected up his lawsuit and resent it into the judge, he removed that source from his paperwork. And ultimately, when the judge threw out Drake's lawsuit, she had said that his complaint about UMG using deceptive business practices on Not Like Us was all built off speculation. It didn't name specific influencers or provide evidence of fake streams or show proof of any misleading campaign. So even if UMG had promoted the song heavily, that's normal marketing fraud. So for that reason, the case was dismissed in full. But even with Drake's lack of evidence in the UMG case, this didn't stop his greatest lasers from saying that Drake was about to revolutionize the music industry by pressing a big red button that would expose not just Kendrick, but all artists for using bots and record labels manipulating the entire business for their little puppets. You had Rory from the Rory and Mal podcast saying things like a Radio Rico was about to come into play.
Michael Jackson tried to do this, and they stopped him. Let's go for it, man. Like, what's so crazy to me with the internet for the last 7 years, y'all have been justifying snitching with real street. But when it comes to labels this week, snitching is against the rules now.
And Drake himself, when attempting to justify his lawsuit, he said he filed it to make the UMG offices a safer space for artists in the future. And it looks like that really might happen. But not through Drake's lawsuit, of course. Why I bring up Drake's lawsuit is because for the past year, ever since he filed it, the music industry has been up in arms about all these botting allegations. The scope of the barrel was on Kendrick Lamar and UMG. But now that Drake's lawsuit just got dismissed, it looks like that scope has now shifted onto Drake. We saw Drake entangled in a lawsuit just last week against State and Drake's shady practices with them, and now Drake is roped into, but not sued. It's important to note he's not getting sued. He is just the face of a brand new lawsuit against Spotify, where they're accusing the platform of botting artists. Now we're going to break down this lawsuit. We're going to break down where Drake is involved in it and understand what this means for the music industry and how this new lawsuit really is in an attempt to make the music industry a safer space for artists in the future. But first, I think it's important to understand what are bots and why would Spotify or certain record labels be incentivized to even use bots in the first place. These are fake streams. It would make no sense for me to put fake views on my video. But why would it make sense for an artist to put fake streams on their songs? Let's unpack it. So, firstly, what are bots? Bots are essentially computer programs or fake Spotify accounts that automatically play songs on repeat. So instead of a real person pressing play, a bot can stream a song 1,000 times, thousands of times, day and night without stopping. Remember back in 2018, J. Cole rapped how many faking their streams of getting their plays from machines. There are literal farms, they're called streaming farms, where a bunch of phones or devices are plugged up in one room, all repeatedly playing the same song over and over again. Artists or companies will pay to use bots to basically just inflate the streaming numbers, making it look like the song is way more popular than it actually is. Well, artists don't just use bots to make their songs look more popular. In certain cases, the bots can actually help the song become more popular. As you guys probably know, a large portion of listeners mainly hear their music through Spotify's playlists. And Spotify ranks their playlists on different levels, right? At the high end, you have the big dog playlists, the biggest playlists like the Rap Caviars or the global top hits today. Then in the middle, you have a bunch of other random playlists. And then at the low end, you have brand new playlists that don't have a lot of traction that can be created by different users on the platform or Spotify themselves. Now, the way songs actually get more streams is by being on the bigger playlists, right? Well, how do you get on those bigger playlists? Typically, it's through a ranking system. If you're a random underground artist, you might start off on one of the very small playlists, right? The level 3, the bottom playlist. If your song is continuously getting played, saved by different users, and people are engaging with it on those smaller playlists, it'll get boosted up to level 2, the bigger playlists. And the cycle continues. If it continues getting a lot of streams on those level 2 playlists, it'll get boosted up to level 1, the higher tier playlists, the Rap Caviars. Those are the playlists that millions, dozens of millions of people are listening to and have saved. So if your song is on one of those playlists, you have a lot more eyeballs on them. Now, if you're signed to a major label and you have a big budget, odds are you can skip these steps and the major label will just get your song on the biggest playlist right off the rip. That's where you see the Drakes, the Kendricks, NBA Youngboy when they release new songs, etc. Now back to the bots. I study bots for a living. If you're on one of those lower level playlists, but you get your music botted to high hell, tons of bots on your music, then you're tricking the algorithm into thinking that people are really messing with your music. And your song, therefore, will move up on these different levels of playlists until you start getting on the biggest ones. That's another incentive for artists to use bots. It tricks Spotify into thinking that people are messing with your song more than they actually are. And it's not just playlists. Spotify's algorithm also recommends new songs to different users, right? And if your song is getting interacted with a lot, even if it's through fake streams, through bots, you're essentially tricking Spotify's algorithm into thinking, okay, people are liking this song, let's recommend it to new users. And this isn't even the biggest problem. This is where the problem lies. If artists like Drake, who dominate a large portion of the actual total music consumption in the world, are really using bots. Because Spotify technically doesn't pay you for each stream that you get. How Spotify's pay system works is they essentially use a pro-rata model that pools all the ad and subscription revenue for the month. They keep 30% and they distribute the remaining 70% to artists based on their total share of streams. So basically, let's say there's 100 billion streams on Spotify for the month and Drake got 1 billion streams that month. He has 1% of the total share of streams on Spotify for that month. So they'll be paying Drake out 1% of all the revenue that the company has received, whether it's through ads, whether it's through subscriptions from their users, etc. But when you add bots into the equation, this is where things get tricky. You're basically stealing market share from other artists, right? If, again, let's say Spotify had 100 billion streams on the platform in total this month, and I only really had 300 million streams, but I had 700 million fake streams, botted streams on my account, then technically I just went from 0.03 market share to 1% market share, meaning that Spotify now has to pay me 1% of all the money that the company earned that month. I'm diluting the other artists. Let's think about it like cake, because I like cake. I study cake for a living. Let's say I own a bakery and I have like all these different bakers. You guys are all the bakers baking me different pieces of cake. Let's say each piece of cake is sold for $3. Let's say there's 10 bakers, so there's 10 slices of cake. The total pool of money that the bakery generated that day is $30. Well, let's say Drake comes in and he fudges the numbers and he writes on my sheet of total sales and X's out that he only sold one cake and says that he really sold 2 pieces of cake. Well, now that $30 gets divided by 11 pieces of cake, not 10. So each of you guys who sold one slice for $3 no longer get $3 because now my numbers don't say you generated 1/10 of the total profits we earned that day. It says instead you generated 1/11 of the total profits. Meanwhile, Drake walks away with most of the profits. Did you see why, based off the way that Spotify pays artists, they can get tricky when certain artists start using these manipulation tactics like bots? And this sucks for lesser known artists because A, they probably don't have the budget to start using bots like the big dogs do, and B, you also have to factor in
You
that
have
the
to
label
take
first
off the
takes the
metal
cut that
thing in the
Spotify
front
pays out,
and
and
go
then they
follow
pay
the
you.
pipes that
So
goes
your
down in
share is
there.
already
Like
getting diluted.
you either
And
have to
the label
like
comes in and takes
play
a
with
huge
it with
portion
your
of
hand,
your
like
share. Not
rock
to
it back
mention
and
the fact
forth,
that
and hope that
independent
the
artists
water
actually
goes
earn
down, or you have to
less
shove a
per
straw
stream
of
on
it.
Spotify than artists signed to a major label. So when Drake said
Yeah.
he's making
All
the
right.
music industry a safer space for artists in the future, he's not lying in terms of something needs to change for how these artists are treated. But the question is, was that really his intention from the beginning? Which no, they love is soon. Now, before we take a look at this lawsuit where Drake is the poster boy for insane botting activity on Spotify, I want to bring your attention to a couple suspicious things that have gone on over the last few months. The first thing being some very strange charting activity of Drake's song Doghouse that he released on his Iceman episode 3. He should name the song Dog Crap because that's what it was, and it fell off the charts pretty quickly. But not before it had a very suspicious couple of days where it kept going up and down in numbers at these rapid, volatile rates that you don't usually see a song grow naturally at. I pointed this out to you guys 2 months ago in September in a video I did back then, so I want to bring you guys the clip before we dissect this lawsuit because, of course, with Drake accusing Kendrick and UNG of strange streaming activity, bot farms on Not Like Us, his Doghouse record, Dog Crap, I should say, had the strangest streaming activity I have personally ever seen on the charts. If you want to take a look at what botting looks like, I'm not saying he necessarily factually did use bots on this Yeet song, but it has some very suspicious charting activity. So the song is released on September 9th, 2025. It cracks the US Spotify charts, and pay attention to these numbers, all right? So September 9th, it comes in around 70 on the charts with around 400,000 streams. it doesn't make the global Spotify charts, meaning it didn't have enough streams to make like the main Spotify chart that has all the most streamed songs globally. But then 3 days later, the song randomly premieres on the global Spotify charts with 2.2 million streams. Remember how I told you the song came out 3 days before this, right? And it was getting around 400,000 streams on the US charts, meaning like in the US, it was streamed 400,000 times on the first day of its release on September 9th. Suddenly, on September 12th, it's getting 2.3 million streams globally the first day that it actually enters that chart. And on the US chart, it bumps up 46 spots to the 13th position with 900,000 streams that day. That's a 500,000 plus increase from its first day on the charts when it had around 400,000. That's very suspicious off the rip because usually a song in its first day will get the most amount of streams and then it slowly starts trickling down. But hey, maybe people didn't know about this song. It was just randomly premiered. Maybe it took a couple days to gain some traction, right? We'll give Drake the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what it does the next day. Surely, if it's gaining that momentum and all of a sudden it just makes its random debut 3 days after its release onto the charts, then surely it's going to start to rise or at least stay around the same numbers, right? Well, keep in mind again, September 12th, it comes on randomly onto the global Spotify charts for its first day, 3 days after it was actually released, with 2.3 million streams at number 43 on the charts. The next day, take a look at how far it dropped. It dropped 107 spots and only got 1.3 million streams. That's 1 million streams less than it had the day before. And the day before, it was already 3 days after its release. A song never just randomly gets a crap ton of streams on a random day and then suddenly drops 1 million streams in the following day. Are you following what I'm saying here? The drop is astronomical. It makes no sense. The next day, it completely falls off the charts. It's no longer on there. And the lowest song on the charts is Addison Rae's Diet Pepsi with around 1 million streams. That means that this Drake song had less than 1 million streams. So follow the numbers, right? The first 3 days of its release, this new song, it's not on the charts at all. One day, 3 days after its release, randomly it pops up with 2.3 million streams. The next day, it falls over 100 spots on the charts and loses 1 million streams. And then the day after that, it falls off the charts completely and has 400,000 less streams than it did the day before. Do you see how suspicious this is? This is almost like his team plugged in a bunch of bots onto the song to see if it would, start gaining the traction if some more eyeballs were on it. But those bots didn't work, and so the song started organically falling off the charts at a rapid rate and losing an insane amount of streams. Probably because on the first day, those streams were not organic to begin with. Say what you want about Kendrick Lamar using bots, but we've never seen one of Kendrick's songs have a massive streaming day, and then all of a sudden the next day it falls 100 positions and then just falls off the charts completely. What the hell is going on? So right off the rip, when I saw this, I immediately thought Drake is suing Kendrick Lamar for botting activity, with no actual sources in his lawsuit proving Kendrick did so. And I reviewed the entire lawsuit with you guys earlier in this video because I want to ask you this final question. Why would Drake be so confident to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on lawyers? Literally, he said to the judge that he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars tracking down people of Kendrick's team to serve them subpoenas to get information for this case. He had no evidence. Why would he be so confident to actually file this lawsuit, go through with it to the lengths that he did, and even when it got dismissed, file a notice to appeal to keep the case going? And the only conclusion I can come to is that Drake knows about these manipulative industry buying tactics because he's either used them in the past or seen them be used in the past. And that's why, even with no evidence against Kendrick Lamar or UMG, he was still confident to go through with this lawsuit. Now, what's also suspicious, and we reviewed this in a couple other previous videos of mine, essentially DJ Snackadiddler and one of his little minions who runs one of his Twitter pages had their houses surrounded by private investigators who were looking to gather data not specifically on academics or his minion, but actually on their connection with Drake and what they know about Drake and his affiliation with State and what they know about Drake using bots. This private investigator, who academics says is a cybersecurity analyst or something along the lines, claims that she knows for sure that Drake used bots. This was just a week or two ago, and we're all so confused. Who could this private investigator be? Why are they surrounding academics? How do they know about Drake using bots? What are they trying to look into with Drake? And just a week later, what do you know? Two lawsuits filed where Drake is at the face of them. One about State and Drake's affiliation with them, and of course, this other one now with Spotify, where they're saying Drake used bots on his music and Spotify let it slide. So while academics was trying to blame Rock Nation for hiring this private investigator to talk about Drake using bots and gather evidence from academics, it seems like this was probably someone hired by the legal team of whoever filed this lawsuit that's now accusing Drake of using bots on his music.
Sat outside, somehow got phone numbers, texted, saying, hey, we're not leaving outside until you see you. We want to speak to you. By the way, also, I need to know what Rock Nation got with Drake. What they got going on?
This is not the academics RICO. This is not the academics takedown. This is an attempted takedown at Drake. They're trying to dig up information from academics' team on what they know behind Drake, but they've been digging, they've been grilling, all right?
This is the academics media empire RICO. Except it's bigger than that. No, this is the Drake League because I've listened to this before. They don't want me. They want Drake. Listen to this.
So academics placed the phone call between the private investigator and the Grand Wizard. And basically, Grand Wizard, he's a guy in Australia. You can look him up. His picture's been exposed. Academics is already jumping ship. He's already acting like he doesn't know who this guy is. He wants nothing to do with him. He's completely disassociating with this guy.
Who's the wizard then? I'm obviously the wizard here.
To be fair, I don't know who Grand Wizard is. I want to put that on the record. My boy, but he might be AI.
So this is where it gets crazy, guys, and you guys are gonna love this. All right. So the private investigator who's questioning this Grand Wizard guy, all right, she says that she knows for 100% certain that Drake bots his music, and she wants to know what Grand Wizard knows about that. Because remember, again, academics had that guy on the stream who was claiming that he was botting music for Kendrick Lamar. TDE was asking academics if Drake is actually the one paying them for all the nasty promotion they do on their Twitter pages, right? We know that when Grand Wizard's account, his Instagram account, got hacked, Drake was the one who had the connects to get it back. And now this private investigator is turning on the Grand Wizard guy to say, I want to know what you know about Drake using bots because I know 100% for certain Drake is out here botting his music, all right? Deploying the K-bots onto his mediocre trash. And they're looking for info, right? They're looking to see because obviously at this point, these academics guys, all these little minions, they have become infiltrated in Drake's operation. And this investigator is looking into whatever they have on Drake for whatever reason. But she says 100%, they know based off the investigations they've done that Drake has used bots. After all the accusations he's made, they're claiming that Drake 100% himself uses bots on his music.
So you're accusing. So Drake bots his music. That's what you're trying to say. Allegedly. You're 100% sure.
Yo, Rock Nation, what's that got going on, man? Rock Nation, make the stallion. Yo, Drake telling y'all other is bot. Y'all trying to get at Drake because y'all think he's bot? Come on, man.
Academics has said that he's done his research on this investigator. She is in fact real and was actually some sort of cyber security investigator, right? So obviously that deals in digital manipulation, right? Fake streams would fall under that category, which is what she's saying she knows 100% for certain Drake uses. Academics is confused. Is this some sort of body investigation? Is that what you're trying to find? Are you trying to find out, if we're the one deploying these illegal fake streams onto Drake's music? Grand Wizard goes on to ask her, why would the biggest artist in the world need fake streams? Well, hey, how do you think he became the biggest artist in the world? The bots, all right, the bots. The investigator also goes on to ask about State, which Drake has a partnership in, right? If you guys didn't know, that's the gambling company that Drake has been doing a bunch of live streams where he gambles on, promotes it to the youth. A very disgusting thing to be promoting to everybody, but yeah, that's what Drake promotes, all right, to get the check. Anything for the bag, right? So Drake has been doing that, been allegedly using the bots. According to this investigator, she's trying to figure out what academics and his little minion know about that.
So why are you certain? The evidence shows that. But why does the biggest artist in the world need to bot his music if he's the biggest artist in the world? You said what?
You know the investigator's name? I looked up their credentials. Again, I don't want to dox them because I don't want none of y'all harassing them. Apparently, they worked in cyber frauds, money laundering frauds, all type of. I don't know if they're investigating. But I don't know what. I don't know what they're investigating.
And this investigator makes it very clear that she believes there is a connection between Drake, this Grand Wizard guy, and academics, right? That they're all in cahoots with one another, but pulling some very sketchy things to say the least. And based off the line of questioning, it's in relation to Stake, it's in relation to the bots, which she says she knows 100% for certain Drake has been using.
How about that? Get up and make sure.
What work do I do?
And someone's gotta say, like, this whole like Meg the Stallion Rock Nation, like they're losing.
So the Grand Wizard goes on to say that these are all Kendrick Lamar allegations, right? The whole body allegations that this woman is making, it's related to Kendrick Lamar, right? Because of course Drake was accusing Kendrick of using the bots, so now she's trying to flip it to say no, Drake is the one using the bots. She's emphasizing she knows nothing about Kendrick Lamar. She is a hired investigator, a cyber investigator. It's her job to know that Drake is using bots. Because this is a very harsh allegation. This is a man's craft here you're talking about. He's perfected his craft over his tenure of his huge music career, and you're trying to diminish it with some Kendrick Lamar allegations. Yeah, I know. So with these private investigators outside academics' house scoping what he knows about Drake using bots and all the strange charting activity that I was talking to you guys about all the way 2 months ago in September, we now have an actual class action lawsuit filed against Spotify that claims that not millions, but billions of Drake streams were fraudulent. So let's go through this doozer, all right? A new class action lawsuit accuses Spotify of turning a blind eye to mass scale fraudulent streaming. And that one musician in particular has been the beneficiary of billions of fake streams, Drake. The lawsuit was filed in California District Court on Sunday night with rapper and cousin of Snoop Dogg, RBX, who's named as the lead plaintiff. While the most eye-popping allegations in the lawsuit relate to Drake's streaming numbers, there are no specific accusations of wrongdoing against the Nokia rapper. Only Spotify is named as a defendant. So, aka, Drake is not the one getting sued. They're just using Drake as an example of Spotify turning a blind eye to massive artists who use bots on their music. They keep going. Every month, under Spotify's watchful eye, billions of fraudulent streams are generated from fake, illegitimate, or illegal methods, like bots. Such mass-scale streaming fraud causes massive financial harm to legitimate artists, songwriters, producers, and other rightful shareholders. Streaming royalties are paid out through the stream share model, where subscription and ad dollars are put into a giant pool, with the money divvied up based on each artist's share of the total streams. Most of that money already flows upstream to the most successful artists and biggest rights holders. In this type of shared pool model, fake streams hurt other artists whose shares aren't inflated. And yeah, we looked at that before, right? Like the whole example with the cake that I gave you guys earlier in this video. So a Spotify spokesperson actually issued a statement on this lawsuit saying, "We can't comment on pending litigation. However, Spotify in no way benefits from the industry-wide challenge of artificial streaming. We heavily invest in always improving best-in-class systems to combat it and safeguard artist payouts with strong protection like removing fake streams, withholding royalties, and charging penalties. Our systems are working. In a case from last year, one bad actor was indicted for stealing $10 million from streaming services, and only $60,000 of which came from Spotify, proving how effective we are at limiting the impact of artificial streaming on our platform. And we did see Spotify take some initiatives over the last few months. That was also why everyone thought, Spotify, the whole industry was scared of Drake's lawsuit, because Spotify over the last few months has been actually removing streams from different artists when those streams were fake or botted. Many people tried to say that it would be Kendrick Lamar or Doechii who had streams removed, but their streams remained intact. Just to let you guys know where they stand on the whole botting thing, right? Now, while the lawsuit suggests that the use of bots is widespread on Spotify, the only example that the lawsuit cites pertains to Drake. I study bots for a living. It claims voluminous, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, voluminous information which Spotify knows or should know that proves a substantial, non-trivial percentage of Drake's 37 billion streams were inauthentic and appeared to be the work of a sprawling network of bot accounts. And a representative for Drake did not immediately respond to a request for comment. So basically they're saying a substantial percentage of all the streams that Drake has had on Spotify were actually fake and bought it. You guys saw the 2018 example I showed you where Drake's face was plastered on every single Spotify playlist. You saw the example with his new song, Doghouse, in 2025, where the streaming activity seems highly suspicious. Now he's in this lawsuit where they claim a large chunk of his 37 billion streams were bought. So much so to the point where this botting was so substantial, Spotify had to have known about it. Now here's where it gets interesting. You might be wondering, Drake's catalog is so big, his old music has such timeless classic hits, right? There's no way these could be bought, right? And ever since he signed a new deal with UMG back in like 2022, his music hasn't been streaming or performing as well on the charts in the way that his old music was. But somehow, ever since then, his old catalog continues to actually outstream his new music. Well, this is what's interesting. According to this lawsuit, the alleged fraudulent botting activity that took place for Drake was between January 2022 and September of 2025, which again is when Drake re-signed his contract with UMG. It claims an examination of Drake's streams revealed abnormal VPN usage that had obscured the location of the bot accounts streaming Drake's songs. For instance, the lawsuit claims that over a 4-day period in 2024, at least 250,000 streams of his song No Case had originated in Turkey, but they were falsely geomapped through the coordinated use of VPNs to the United Kingdom in an attempt to obscure their origins. AKA, there might have been a big stream or botting farm in Turkey that was just, constantly boosting fake streams onto Spotify, but they were using a VPN on those devices that were doing the fake streams, and the VPNs had placed the device's location as in the UK. But what's very interesting is that, of course, they named the fake streams to have derived from Turkey, right? Well, back in this summer, the Turkey government had actually started looking into Spotify to see if it's acting unfairly in the country's music market. The officials were investigating two main things. Number one, playlist favoritism, whether Spotify gives unfair advantages to certain artists or record labels in how songs show up on playlists and recommendations or in rankings. And number two was unfair pricing, whether or not Spotify subscription prices are so low that other music platforms can't compete or smaller music companies can't earn enough money. Basically, the government wants to know if Spotify is using its power to squeeze out competitors or treat some artists better than others. And again, we saw the playlist favoritism that they showed Drake back in 2018 with his Scorpion album. Now, this new lawsuit is claiming that they have evidence to say 250,000 streams in 4 days of Drake's song No Face were actually from Turkey, but they were using a VPN to say that the streams came from the UK and that the streams were actually bought in Turkey. Pretty crazy stuff here. The lawsuit also alleges that a large percentage of accounts streaming Drake's music were geographically concentrated around areas whose population could not support such a high volume of streams. No exact places or numbers were given, though the suit claims that some streams reportedly originated in areas with 0 residential addresses. So basically, a lot of Spotify accounts streaming Drake's music came from locations that didn't even have any residents in them. Meaning, how could there be people with devices in these locations when no one actually even lives in these locations? The lawsuit also cites significant and irregular uptick months for Drake's songs long after they've been released, as well as slower and less dramatic decay rates for Drake's music compared to his contemporaries. Decay rates refer to typical streaming patterns where plays of an album or song naturally dwindle in the weeks and months after they release. Basically, the first day Drake drops a song, it's going to get tons of streams because a lot of new eyeballs are on it, but as the days progress, there's less and less people that continue to listen to that song. That's very natural. I showed you guys with that example with the song Doghouse, how the streams seemed up and down at very volatile rates. It was very irregular how the actual decay rates were moving. And now this lawsuit is saying the exact same thing, also saying there were significant and irregular uptick months for Drake songs after they've been released. And that's interesting because we have noticed a lot of old Drake music suddenly randomly receive massive amounts of streams in 2025, songs that were released way back in 2011, right? And to any OVO watching who thinks I'm biased or unfair because I was criticizing Drake's lawsuit, but I'm not criticizing this, I always said I was curious to see the botting allegations, how those would play out in Drake's lawsuit. The reason why I was critical on Drake's lawsuit is because he was suing over a rap battle, and if he won, it would set a new precedent for how we judge freedom of speech was in song lyrics. That was always the problem. That's not the case with this lawsuit. They're criticizing how Spotify actually allows top dogs like Drake to manipulate the charts. The lawsuit further claims that the number of streams of Drake's music attributable to individual accounts is staggering and irregular. with a massive amount of accounts listening to Drake's music, doing so 23 hours a day. Less than 2% of these users, the lawsuit goes on to claim, account for roughly 15% of Drake's streams, and about 9% of Drake's streams are attributable to less than 1% of these users. What are they trying to say here? Basically, a huge number of Drake's streams come from strange non-stop activity, no pun intended, since he has a song called Non-Stop. Ha 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 ha. Some accounts play his music for almost 23 hours a day. That sounds like botting activity, right? A device that just constantly playing your music over and over again to boost the numbers. It also claims that less than 2% of his listeners make up about 15% of his total streams, and under 1% of users generated 9% of all of his plays, meaning that a very small chunk of the users who are actually playing Drake songs on Spotify account for a large percentage of his total streams. Either you have some absolutely insane fans who are streaming his music 23 hours a day, where 2% of those fans make up 15% of the total 37 billion streams that Drake has, or some botting activity is going on. I wouldn't put it past the OVOs to really be streaming his music that much, but these numbers are absolutely insane, if true. So the lawsuit continues. As a result, Drake's music accumulated far higher total streams compared to other highly streamed artists, even though those artists had more users than Drake. Meaning, other artists, probably like Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, maybe even Kendrick Lamar, had more actual Spotify users listening to their music, but somehow Drake had way more streams than these people. Meaning that Drake had less people listening, but they were listening for a lot longer, or maybe there was just bots that were, spamming his music over and over again to boost up the numbers. That's essentially what the lawsuit is trying to imply. It is important to note, though, that the lawsuit does not state how the plaintiffs or their lawyers obtained this data, nor does it shed any light on how the analysis of Drake's streaming numbers were conducted. Basically, the guy who filed this lawsuit is actually Snoop Dogg's cousin, did some work on Dr. Dre's album, The Chronic. He's filing this on behalf of all artists that have their music on Spotify, saying that there is some unfair activity going on and Spotify is turning a blind eye to it. But he's not showing how him or his lawyers actually conducted this research or got this information and these numbers off of Drake's streaming activity. These alleged fraudulent streams generated significant revenues for Drake and his company Frozen Moments, but it was at the expense of other artists, the lawsuit claims. But it also states that Spotify deliberately turns a blind eye to fraudulent streaming for its own benefit. While Spotify had taken steps in recent years to combat and tamp down streaming fraud, the lawsuit cast doubt on the efficacy of those measures and Spotify's own incentives to stop fraud. It suggests that Spotify is particularly vulnerable to bots on the platform's ad-supported free tier because myriad accounts can be generated without handing over a credit card number. By allegedly allowing bots to run rampant, Spotify can present high stream and user activity numbers to potential advertisers, the lawsuit alleges. Basically, anyone can create a free Spotify account without using a credit card, so it's very easy for these bot farms to have a million devices create fake Spotify accounts and just continuously stream songs, right? And Spotify turns a blind eye because then they could go to their advertisers and say, hey, look at how many users we have. You can run ads on our platform, and we have all these different people, these different accounts that you can run ads to, but a lot of these accounts are fake. The lawsuit continues. For Spotify, more users and music streams means more advertising dollars, so long as the true origin of the streams remains hidden. Artists across the streaming industry need accurate reporting of streams and effective fraud detection to ensure fair compensation. When streams are artificially inflated on a large scale, like this artist claims Drake music has, it affects the income of countless songwriters, performers, and producers. The lawsuit seeks to address these broader issues, recoup losses for affected musicians, and make the streaming ecosystem as fair and transparent as possible for everyone involved. The new lawsuit and the claims regarding Drake's music notably come just weeks after a judge tossed Drake's lawsuit against UMG, which contained its own allegations of streaming fraud. Though technically a defamation case, Drake accused his own record label UMG of course artificially inflating the popularity of Kendrick's diss track, Not Like Us, marking arguably the most high-profile allegation of streaming fraud to date. UMG denied all Drake's allegations, and the streaming fraud claim specifically, writing in a March legal filing, there is no evidence of such stream manipulation. Streaming fraud has been a topic of discussion in the industry for years. While pinpointing just how rampant it is and calculating corresponding lawsuits is very difficult. Most estimates hover in the range of hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions. Basically, when trying to calculate how many millions of dollars artists have lost because of other artists using bots, it's in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. A 2019 Rolling Stone report noted that fake streams could be costing artists $300 million a year. A 2023 study in France found that between 1 and 3% of all streams in the country were fake. If those numbers are held true globally, that would mean royalty losses of up to $510 million. Last year, Beat App, a streaming fraud detection program, estimated that at least 10% of all streams are fraudulent, leading to annual losses of $2 to $3 billion. So obviously this is a big problem on Spotify and it's costing artists tons of money because like I gave you guys in that example before, when the pie gets diluted and Spotify thinks that these artists who are using bots are actually, streaming a large percentage of the pie of total streaming numbers on the platform, those artists get paid a higher amount. Meanwhile, the other artists who are not using bots, their percentage of the total pie shrinks and they get paid less. Efforts to crack down on streaming fraud have ramped up around the world. A Danish man was convicted last year, while another individual arrested in Brazil back in March. Over the summers, officials in Turkey, where the lawsuit says some of the alleged fraudulent Drake streams originated, they started investigating Spotify over several allegations, including bribes for playlist placement and bot streams distorting domestic charts. And in the US, federal prosecutors got an unprecedented streaming fraud indictment last September against a North Carolina musician named Michael Smith. Smith is accused of using artificial intelligence to generate hundreds of thousands of songs, which he then allegedly streamed with bots. The feds claim that at one point, Smith had as many as 10,000 active bot accounts streaming his music and allegedly made over $10 million from this scheme. Basically, this guy was making AI songs, so he was able to put out like thousands of songs. Then he was using bots to actually stream the songs. And then Spotify, of course, pays him out for those fake streams because they don't know they're fake. Drake filed his first legal claims over Not Like Us just 2 months after Michael Smith was arrested and indicted on these bot charges. And the official defamation suit was brought in January of this year. The streaming fraud allegations against UMG were based on statements from a purported anonymous whistleblower who appeared on a show by DJ Academics, the popular streamer and longtime Drake associate. As stated in Drake's lawsuit, the whistleblower claimed that Kendrick's label Interscope paid him $2,500 via third parties to use bots to achieve 30 million streams on Spotify in the initial days following the release of Not Like Us. Per Drake's lawsuit, the whistleblower said the goal was jumpstarting the song's spread and making it a crazy hit right off the bat on the platform. UMG, in a motion to dismiss, noted that the whistleblower directly refuted his own claim when he said that he was hired by Kendrick's manager, Anthony Soleil. In a revised complaint in April, Drake pared down his allegation, claiming UMG was aware that third parties were using bots to stream the recording and turned a blind eye, despite having the power to stop such behavior. So basically, again, in Drake's first lawsuit, he had that source of the Academics live stream where that whistleblower went on and said he was paid $2,500 to put 30 million fake streams on Not Like Us. But then when he refiled the lawsuit in April, he actually removed that source and corrected it to say that UMG was just aware that third parties were using bots on Not Like Us, with no actual evidence to support it. The original lawsuit also alleges that UMG conferred financial benefits to Apple so that Siri would purposely misdirect users to Not Like Us when they asked it to play Drake's album Certified Lover Boy. This claim was sourced partly to a viral video posted by Hip Hop DX's Jeremy Pecht, who later clarified that Siri appeared capable of pulling songs based on just lyrics it recognized, thus asking Siri to play Certified Lover Boy without specifying